Hey everybody, good morning and welcome to DDL Advertising. We're in East Providence with Stacey Caputi Liakos.
Yes.
And I actually met Stacey through Jen. All right, Stacey is Jen's twin sister and her stunt double.
Yes, correct.
So what do you do here?
Well, DDL Advertising is a marketing and advertising agency. We've been in business we'll be 8 in February. Wow. Yeah. And it's a full service marketing, advertising. We do media buys, graphic design, websites, social media management, branding, pretty much everything in-house, photo, video.
Wow. How many staff members?
Currently, there's a dozen of us.
Wow.
Yes.
Does everybody get along?
They do. Yes, we're mostly a happy home, as I like to say.
Awesome. She actually gave me a copy of her book. I want to jump into that. It's called Stray Love. All right, and I feel proud because my friends now have books. Right, I'm getting to an age where my friends have accomplishments. So there's a lot in here, right? There's a lot. I read it. It was an easy read. I mean, not easy in the sense of what you've been through, but easy for me to just, it just flowed. It flew in my mind. So what can you share with the audience about this, in a nutshell, that you want them to know? And also tell us about the movie. This is being made into a movie, which is awesome.
Yes, the book, so there's a lot to say about the book, but in a nutshell, I mean, really, it's the story of my life, with an ex that I was with for close to a decade. So it's the journey of, our relationship, the trials, tribulations, challenges we faced, and, just pretty much captures a lot of love, loss, death, drugs, from abusing to selling. So it's really just a combination of where I started, where I went, and kind of how I got to where I am today, with, happy ending, being, married now with children and, in a whole different phase of my life.
And DDL stands for your 3 children, right?
Yes, Delilah, Demetrius, and Liliana. I did want to name the business after something that meant a lot to me, so it seemed pretty clear once I realized I wanted to do that.
Yeah. And I read this, and I'm not much of a reader, but just the story, I think it was, I forget what chapter specifically, maybe chapter 5 or 6, you were talking about being on Charles Street in Providence. And what were you, like 16, 17?
I was young, crazy to think, but yes, around that age.
Freshman, sophomore in high school.
Yes.
And Ray was in, what type of car was it?
It was a blue Toyota Corolla, small car.
And the imagery, I just pictured it, like him kind of like maybe hanging out, maybe a chain, maybe a hat on. And
white T-shirt, Air Force Ones, yeah. Confettis outside a club. Confettis. Yes, that was a long time ago. But it was on Charles Street, and it was, a blue Toyota with like goldish rims. My memory serves me correctly.
Isn't that wild?
It's crazy how time flies.
And what would you say, to your younger self if you could right now, anything? Or would you let it be the way it was?
Oh, that's a tough question. If anything, well, I would probably say should have listened to my parents. Ooh. That could be something that I would say to my younger self, because, when you're raised with parents that, love you and want to help you along the way, obviously they've experienced, right, being a parent now. They've been there, done that. But when you're younger, you don't see the forest through the trees. Maybe you want to learn, like to learn the hard way, as my mom always said. But if anything, I say should have listened to your parents. But at the same time, I always was that type of child that my mom said, if I tell you the pan's hot, you're not going to believe me. You're going to touch it to make sure. Right. And there is a value to that, because I don't feel as though anyone should go through life just listening to I mean, be that as it may, my parents are not that people should listen to their parents if there's anybody out there. Still. But you also have to make your own choices and face your own consequences, which is probably the toughest thing to live with as a parent when you're a child or young, growing up and living and learning. You don't see any of that until you're older. So, but that's what I would have said to myself back then. But I don't know if I still would have listened.
Still listen to yourself.
Clearly I didn't.
Self, I'm not listening to you. You know nothing.
Just gonna learn. Still gonna take the road and see where it leads you.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer. I don't like to be told what to do.
I know.
And my whole life, when somebody told me like, do this, do that, I would say, I'll listen. I'll be like, all right, good advice, thank you, but I want to burn my hand.
Yeah.
Or not burn my hand. Maybe I don't.
Yeah.
Because my data is different from your data.
Yes.
So if your mom or your dad, who is 30, 40 years older, says, don't do that, you're kind of like, what do you know? Yes. Times are different. I'm different. What's your truth? What's my truth?
Yes, and to add to that, although my parents always had their heart in the right place, I probably never would have opened a business. I've always been very entrepreneurial.
Gotcha.
And I did have a full-time job at Channel 6 with benefits and a 401k right out of college, and that made my parents very proud, obviously, but they wanted security and safety and the right things for their kids. But I wanted more than that. So when I left working at Channel 6, it really upset my parents too. And they didn't want me to make those choices. And in that sense, if I listened to them, I might not have my own business. And granted, I failed along the way many times, but I still am where I am today. That I would never change. And even with being married now to my husband, maybe my road led me to him somehow, and I probably still wouldn't change that. But so my parents, always come from a good place, and I, respect and value all that they've given me. But in that case, I'm glad I definitely didn't listen to them and stay at Channel 6, because I really love what I'm doing today, and I don't know if I would have gotten here.
And how about your message to women? Because there's plenty of women that are in situations like that. What would you say to them?
Well, really, it's a couple things. Like, what you see is what you get. I mean, I hate to put it that bluntly, but people don't really change. And if you're not willing to accept them the way that, someone is in a relationship, then I think they need to face that reality and move on and do what's best for them. Because from day one, Ray was who he was. He never hid who he was. I knew it going in. I just was hoping to change him. And sometimes you just can't change anybody. And that's, I think, what a lot of women in general go in thinking, change them, or maybe in my case, save them. But it's really hard to do that, because you only can control yourself and the choices that you make. So if someone really can understand that what you see is what you get, a leopard doesn't change their spots. I mean, all of those cliches, even other things my parents used to say, I mean, that was the truth, because he was exactly who he was. So that's one message. And that's not to say you can't, try or love someone unconditionally, but if it gets dysfunctional, or if it gets to a place that's just unsafe, or that you're truly not happy, it's okay to just walk away. Like, it's put yourself first and make the harder choice for what's better for you in the long run.
How many women deal with stuff like that?
I mean, countless. I think for everyone that's read my book, which at this point, it's definitely in the thousands, which is amazing to me to say.
Crazy?
It is, because it's like, I did publish this book just over a year ago, really, that I kind of let people know that it was published, even though it was written, and I never told anyone about it. But once it was published, and more than just my family and friends read it, now that there's literally strangers who have reached out to me and said how relatable it was. I mean, there's just so many people, because also my age, which I'm a little bit older now, it's also realizing everybody has had a past. Everybody usually has loved the wrong person or just made poor choices. I mean, I'm not special in that case. It's sometimes you just can't help who you love, and it's okay. But yeah, I mean, there's people living this every single day, and that can relate in so many ways. It's like what so many people that I know, even that have been through it, and then that have reached out, that read my book, that have shared it as well, that they could relate, and they have been through some of the same things.
Yeah, we're all figuring it out.
Yes.
There's nobody that's a perfect specimen. Some are closer than others to perfection. It's very hard, and you shouldn't say I am a perfect and I'd have to stop and I'm all set. Every day I feel like we should be trying to better ourselves, and this was like another life for you.
It really was.
It was like a part one, and it's like intermission, and now you're in part two. I just feel that it gave me a message of, you're never stuck where you are either. You can always move on.
Very true. You can.
You're not bound to this lifestyle just because you made a decision when you were 15. I'm gonna love this person.
Yeah, it's very true, and I did love them, and I think I'll always have love for him, and it really broke my heart to leave him, but I also think I grew up in a lot of ways, as someone should.
Yeah.
And I was in therapy for a while, and I remember my therapist said, usually if a young love doesn't make it, it's because one person might grow up and want different things out of life. And I got to the point that I did. I mean, luckily I was raised in a home that I was very loved, that provided, family values, work ethic, and just different things that, sadly, I don't think Ray was exposed to. Gotcha. So my foundation was strong. And even though I liked to learn the hard way, I still, in my opinion, knew the right way. Like, I knew what I wanted out of life. Once I graduated college, once I realized that this person would be a father of my child, like, I just grew up. I got a little bit smarter and wiser, and realized that it just wasn't the things that I wanted. I clearly wasn't perfect, and had my fair share of fun, but so did a lot of other people I know. It doesn't mean that we didn't evolve as people and want more for ourselves and better for our lives. And that's kind of where I think a lot of just enjoying the journey, taking the road that you're on, and being open and ready to realize that, who you are today might not mean it's going to be who you are tomorrow. And you just have to keep trying to make the best choice for today and for the future, I think is what you end up doing a little bit more as you get older. It's not so much about what I'm doing today. Correct. It's like, how's this going to impact me? You start thinking about things a lot more.
What's my legacy?
Yeah.
What's my children's?
Yes.
And I want to shout out Sal and Sylvia.
Yes.
Because I feel the foundation that they gave you, right? This metaphorical home that they gave you was able to weather that storm. Mm-hmm. You could have been swept away by that current.
Very easily.
In a million different ways.
Yes.
But the foundation that they gave you was so strong to bear these hurricane force winds for years.
Yes.
And you still came out. You maybe lost some shingles and some windows, but you were still there.
I was grounded. Yes,
you were still grounded, and then you were able to say, "Okay, we're going to rebuild the house."
Yes,
and you did. And you have 3 beautiful children, wonderful husband, a beautiful business, and now your book is being turned into a
movie.
Tell
Crazy.
us about that.
So, funny enough, Rhode Island's a small world, and Ray's cousin that also was exposed to a lot of the same challenges and obstacles and dysfunction. Ray chose a better path in life. He ended up moving to Florida and is an actor, and we've always known each other. And he saw that I published my book on Facebook, and got himself a copy, read it, reached out. We kind of reconnected and talked a lot about just the past and Ray in the book. And he happened to be starring in a movie that was being director Mike Blevins was directing and or producing. and he shared a copy with them and was like, hey, read this memoir. And as, it just so happened they wrapped their project, he read and liked my memoir a lot. We all connected through, Zooms mostly. He lives out in LA. And one thing led to another. And yes, it's been, screenplay. It's been written, and he came and visited Rhode Island back in May. And there's a lot of layers, a lot to learn, and a big process that we'll be going through. But yes, we'll be shooting and filming in Rhode Island to keep the story, as authentic and genuine as we can.
Charles Street will be in the movie?
Yes, we'll be hopefully closing down a lot of streets throughout Rhode Island, and bringing, the book to life, which obviously was written from my perspective, and we're layering in a little bit more of Ray's perspective in the movie too. So clearly it's coming from me, and it's based on the book, but with the creativity and brilliance of Mike and Bruce, and just us talking and thinking things out. The idea, just to name it Stray. We're dropping love for the movie, which I kind of love myself.
And will you keep the red?
Hopefully, yes.
I think that's important.
It is, and it's like that. Just that name, and that's my marketing and advertising. But obviously, ST for Stacey, Ray, Saint Ray, Love Universal.
Saint Ray, wow, yeah.
It's just a lot of meaning behind this. So, the screenplay has been worked on and being polished and bringing us all to. It's not a rush. It's like this. I was ready 10 years after I wrote it. It took me to publish it almost. Wow. I never wrote it to publish it, but once I kind of revisited it during COVID and just literally took it off a shelf when I was cleaning stuff out, just in a manuscript form.
So this was a journal for you, or was it a way to express yourself?
It was a way that it was a grieving process after Ray died. I really felt very lost because, like I say in the book, I knew he was either going to be dead or in jail when I left him. And that was very, very hard for me to
know.
To truly believe. And I didn't obviously want either for him. But once I decided to make choices that benefited myself, which also seems somewhat selfish to do.
No.
I mean, at that point, it was hard. It was so hard, and knowing I was going on and I was going to be happy, and feeling though he would never have happiness in a life that he maybe so wanted, he just couldn't. And then, everything happening, the worst nightmare happening as I thought it would. I just wrote and just grieved through the process, because it was really tough, because I also was already in a relationship. I moved on, like as though although I would always love him, and it took a piece of my heart, and I would have wished him well. I would have been friends with him. I mean, unfortunately, the circumstances didn't allow that. I mean, I had a restraining order on him, and it just got really ugly, sadly. But I was happy. I was in another relationship. My life was moving in a direction that I always wanted, and he was fading farther and farther away. So the guilt of knowing that always would be with someone, I think, if you have a heart. I mean, it's not like a crazy thing to say, but then when he did in fact overdose and I got the call, it kind of sucked me back into where I was, and then I didn't know how else to express it, because it wasn't like I was going to be talking about it with my boy Demetrius. It just was a weird situation. So in my spare time, I just wrote and kind of got my story out to never forget it. And it kind of helped me just grieve and get through some really tough years, kind of, mourning his loss.
Wow.
The movie, and I thought the book was done, and, it's still selling great. I mean, if anything, month over month, it's getting better, just between growing social media pages, being sold on Amazon, through Goodreads, some other online publications. So there's so much life to it that it's taken on a life of its own. And then now to bring in a movie is like a whole other layer and project. But I feel proud to do that, just because it's kind of keeping him alive one way. It's hopefully allowing people to relate and to give people hope, maybe, and tell my story that other people can maybe it could help them in some way, shape, or form. And it's, I'm excited and proud. And when it's ready to hopefully be filming next year,
Ooh.
it'll just be a whole other journey and part of this process that I'm excited for.
Wow. So filming next year, maybe theaters 26?
Yeah, well, we have to, so like I said, there's a lot to learn, but it's going to be distributed in what channel, so to speak, remains to be seen, depending on who picks it up, because as we know, the traditional movie theater is one extension now with all the Netflixes and Hulus, and just the world as we absorb any type of content has changed a lot. So depending on, I think it'll be wonderful and land where it's supposed to, but it could be in a theater, it could be in a streaming platform. We'll have to see what happens once it's done.
What would you do differently if you could with the book? Would you be more detailed? Would you be less detailed? Would you have added more? Let's see, how many pages are there? The pages aren't numbered.
Yeah,
that's one thing
you pointed out, which is very interesting. It's just about 200 pages.
Yeah.
And it's funny, it was probably another 100 plus pages, but because I edited it constantly, because I never stopped just making it better in my mind once I put on my writer's hat, not my heart. I really fine-tuned it to be a very fast, relatable read.
It was quick. I read it in 4 hours.
A lot of people do. Yeah. But it's funny because my sister says that's the PG version of what actually happened.
I thought it was pretty...
Which, yeah. So it's funny when people read it, because when she read it, that she's like, oh, you kept it PG, because to be honest, it really is. And it's crazy to say that, but I don't know how many more. I think your reaction says what people think when they read it. It's like, but now that it's out and it's there, could I have, it was honest, but it just was, there's probably some other things that happened that I just didn't feel the need to share. But it could have been maybe a little bit longer if I wanted to add to it. But I guess it ended up where it was supposed to be. I was ready. I got it to a point that I was just ready to publish it, and then I did. So, so I'm happy with where it ended.
Awesome. And what do you see for yourself after the movie comes out? How do you envision that? Because now it's going to be, all right, a book, you're popular. A movie, now you're kind of a big deal, right? Nobody can say that they've had a movie made about their life. Very few people.
No, that's true. And I really don't put a lot of thought into that.
You're going to still show up to work?
Oh my God, yes.
Yes, 100%. You're not going to turn into some left coast crazy person and Botox or any of that stuff? No. Good.
Yeah, no, those are never any of my intentions. And I don't want to sound like I never wrote this book to profit from it. I'm not saying people don't like money. I'm not saying that.
Nice thing.
It isn't. It is. It makes maybe life, a little easier in some ways, but lessons, I know my children are going to read this someday.
Yes.
My children will watch it. I want them to know I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. I'll always be there to support them in their journey, but nothing that I've done with this or the movie, I want it to be right. I want to be happy with the choices, the way, I don't want Ray to always be, I don't know if he, people said he was somewhat of a villain or the bad guy. I truly don't want him to be remembered that way. I want to, raise awareness that children are products of their environment when they're growing up, and to hope to, make parents understand that they have to provide and sacrifice maybe some of their own things they want to raise good-hearted, solid, happy kids, because that's where he fit. That's the problem. He was a product of his environment, and as much as he tried, it speaks volumes on how important it is through, if you're incarcerated, if your parents are selling drugs, exposing you to drugs, you're doing them violence, drinking, the dysfunction that he was exposed to breaks my heart, because when I'm tucking my daughter in the 6th grade, knowing that's really when they stopped bringing them to school, I can't wrap my head around that, and I hope that this can, people reading this will realize just how important it is that don't know that. And to me, it's wild that someone would, expose their children to a life of this sort. But sadly, this is the world we live in.
Yeah, the broken home is the new home.
Yeah. Everything from this is done for the right reasons. Because to be honest, no one needs to know this about my life.
Right.
I mean, there's people I've met in my career. I mean, and people I never even wanted to know that this happened. It's like, what good is coming? I mean, it's not my skeletons in my closet. I'm a very private person. I mean, even socially, if I'm not on social media posting everything I'm doing day to day, if you're my friend and you're part of my life, you're going to know.
Yeah.
And that's what means something to me, to each his own. But through this, so it's like I want good to come out of it and hope for other people that might feel like they're in different situations, that they're stuck, or just maybe make them think a little bit harder on how important certain things are.
Well said.
Thanks.
So moving a couple years, until then, where can folks get a copy of this?
Amazon's the easiest way. It's on Amazon Prime.
How much is it?
It's you could, if you subscribed, if you're an Amazon Prime member, you can get it free on Kindle.
Oh.
So you get it, you can download it right away.
That's
So
pretty neat.
yeah, I can't beat that. Which I am, big reader, and Kindle Prime offers a lot of great books. So it's on there. You can get a paperback copy for $9.99, I believe it is, and then the hard copy is, I think, $15.99. So depending on, there's a few ways. Barnes and Noble, it's available on their.com.
Is it in any physical location?
No, it's not in any physical location.
That's got to be. It's probably antiquated too, right?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a whole
work?
other process that I really haven't explored yet. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but that's a possibility. But
well, maybe
no.
after the movie, people will want the hard copy.
Yeah, possibly.
So anybody out there watching, press, media, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, we have, it's mystraylove.com. So if you log on to the website, there's an email on there that I would directly get, hello@mystraylove.com. And then you can follow our social channels at mystraylove.com, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And I have access to all of those platforms and the messages that come through.
And the last thing I want you to do, for those in a dysfunctional relationship, I want you to say in 4 sentences or less what you recommend they do.
If you are in a dysfunctional relationship, I recommend you, turn to hopefully friends and family that can provide a good support system to help you, make a plan to leave the relationship safely and, give yourself a break and know that, it's okay and put yourself first to get out of, any situation that's not safe.
Put yourself first. I like that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're selfish.
I know. It doesn't. It doesn't. And that's hard for someone that's in, and it's easier to stay sometimes.
It is.
It is.
But I like that because people say, oh, no, I can't. I'm being selfish. If you don't have you figured out, you can't share that with somebody else.
No.
So you have to be selfish in
Yes.
order, and then once you have a good polished version of you, you can share that like you have now, and you've manifested your dream. So it's not being selfish. I think people think that I can't leave, right? He's going to end up in a bad way,
Yes.
or he's going to end up in a bad spot. Well, you know what? Right now I'm in a bad spot, and he's in a bad spot.
Yeah.
So is 2 or 1 better?
I know. And if there's kids in the mix, you have to put them first.
Yes. Which that was not a factor here.
I know. Thank God.
Imagine if it was.
I know.
That would have been. I mean, it was already when I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh. And if I was waiting to turn the page to hear, like, I'm pregnant.
I know. Thank God I never went that far.
So, anyways, you should read this. It's inspirational. It is. I got so many chuckles too, like just
there's
little
some funny-
moments, some
yeah.
funny stuff. And if you're from Rhode Island or from Mass, you can relate.
Yeah.
You might know some of these establishments, and it's just an awesome thing. And I'm not a reader, so it's a lot for me to say this. And we look forward to seeing the movie. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stacey. And if you have any questions for me, I don't know why you would, but put them in the comments below, and I'll get right back to you. Once again, Greg Rice and Stacey Caputi Liakos here at DDL Advertising.